This is the Oz report for March 2nd, 2024, and we're going to have a look at the overall market again. One thing that is very obvious is that prices are rising. We have a high market volume this week. We have the market trading 10% over yearly average. We have rising prices overall, and especially raw materials have been spiking. If you were here or listened to this last week, you know that raw moon materials, they went up 4% last week. They went up 4% again this week. Also, advanced moon materials, reaction materials up 2%, salvage up 2%, ancient salvage up 2%, gas clouds up 2%. So raw materials are just massively rising, and that is a good indication of production kickstarting in EVE Online. So overall, if we look at pilot services, so Plex and Plex adjacent, Plex hasn't changed much, and skill injectors and skill extractors both rose by about 1%. That means that the skill farming equation is largely unchanged, and since skill injectors and skill extractors are very much linked, there isn't really much to report here. One big thing that we have to say is that abyssal filaments, they're up 5%. That is quite big. They were spiking last week as well. So there is just a lot of activity. I've had a look at the overall abyssal activity, just because we've had a lot of stuff happening in there. You know, last week we had the nerf of abyssal ships, for example. So we're seeing a lot of trade-off between the various filaments, and we are seeing an increase in market trading. If you look at how many are run, we did have a spike or a higher activity of abyssals in mid-February, and since then it has leveled off a little bit again. But let's jump into more details, and for this we're going to go over here and we're going to open the game client. So if we're talking what is trending up, the biggest of the large trading items that is trading up is chaotic gamma filaments. So they're up 44%. If we look at it on the game client over here, then you can see how extreme that climb is. It was already climbing over the last few months, but now it has climbed more. I'm guessing part of this is because a lot of the people that were running Firestorm ones and Ikitursas were nerfed, or the disintegrated weapons were nerfed, and so now people are looking where they can go, and the chaotic gamma filaments are a staple. You can run them in a Gila, for example, and that is where people are moving. It's probably partly that is where they're moving, and partly maybe people are speculating, but you know, volumes aren't all up that much. So this is basically just a shift of people turning from one type of filament to the other. Now, the other thing that is trending up this week a lot is moon materials, as I mentioned. So one, we have hafnium going crazy again. We talked about that last week a little bit. So here, you know, hafnium R32 moon material, very good indicator of tier 2 production rising. Certainly last week we were speculating about the Southeastern Agreement having the end of it having something to do with hafnium prices rising. Other moon materials that are going up: mercury up 24%, and also cadmium up here up 20%. And so these are three of the null and low sec moon minerals, and they're all spiking very, very hard. Overall, just a good sign of production. If you look at tier 2 production, certainly if these prices hold over time, you will see definitely an increase in tier 2 modules and tier 2 ships. All right, let's look at what's trending down this week, and there I want to start with 0-point field manipulators. 0-point field manipulators go into tier 2 Triglavian ships, right? So we're talking the Nurgle, the Draugr, Ikatursa, and the Zarm. We just talked about Ikitursas. They got nerfed along with all the other Triglavian ships, And so certainly that's a hit to any material that goes into them, especially because here there is no other need for these materials. So abyssal materials like zero-point condensate or crystalline isogen and these advanced Triglavian components like the zero-point field manipulator, there is no other use for them. So now there's just less demand for them, and so the prices that were already hurting are now last week dropping even more. So this, in the end, this will mean that Triglavian chips overall are going to be cheaper again, which is interesting because overall, if you compare their pricing to their power level, they were already quite cheap. So this might be an area where there needs to be some sort of action in the future. Let's look at what else is trending down. We have intact shield emitters. So this is salvage materials in tier 2 rig production. They were just trading at a very, very high price. And at some point, these are not incredibly difficult to collect and to loot. All you have to do is you actually have to go out and salvage more, or you have to liquidate your stockpiles of them. So they were just getting too high in price, and now they're going back to their typical equilibrium. This is more a cyclical thing, and so this will go hand in hand with the levels of tier 2 rig production that are going on. That's just it. It's very simple. And now they're coming back from a very, very high price just back into normal range. They're still quite expensive though. The third thing I want to mention in trending down is these Federation Navy Fleet Captain Insignias. So these are the insignias that you use in LP stores to buy stuff, for example. And they're trending down 10%, but they also have this outlier right here. You can see that they, somebody sold a whole bunch of them very, very cheap. Why do I know that? Because their availability has dropped by about 50%. So if we look at the availability of them, typically when 50% of supply gets bought up or gets reduced, typically that means that somebody has bought up a bunch of that. Here it's the opposite. Here somebody took a lot of the supply and dropped it straight to buy orders. And so here we have a crashing price. 1.5 million is a good lower bound here for these. And we can see that buy orders are already at 1.429. So if you ask me, these are actually in good buy territory. Over time, these probably are going to climb to 2 million again. Although, the LP stores have been in turmoil because we've had a lot of shifts in the availability of different items in different stores. We've had new stores added in Havoc, and so all of this is very much in flux. But these Federation Navy Fleet Captain Insignias, they're used for Caldari Navy modules, if you're interested and if you want to follow up on that. All right, let's look at Insured Supply. What is Insured Supply? And there I want to talk about, power conduits. Power conduits, there's less than one trade day available on these, and these are also used for T2 rig and structure production, just like the intact shield emitters. Except these haven't spiked in price yet. So the power conduits there, what is their price? Is 1.74, which, okay. So they did spike now. They didn't earlier, but they have spiked now. They are quite expensive now, and not a lot left in the market. I don't think they're going to rise any more after this. You can see that 1.75 has been the upper bounds, and it looks to me more like there is one large producer who goes in and buys everything below 1.75 every once in a while. You can see these large spikes. These are where people go in and buy large amounts of it. And so that seems to me like that is what's happening right now. The price has spiked quite a bit. Let's look at the Widow. So the Widow is a Black Ops battleship, and essentially there are none left in the market. So earlier when I checked, there were 3. Now at least we're up to what, 13 again, but the daily trade volume is about that. So we have less than 1 day available, and the price has spiked. Now this is not necessarily due to the material cost. The material cost of this is around 1 billion. So that's, that's okay. But it does contain a lot of hafnium, for example. So hafnium, we know that is spiking. So that might be making some people nervous. And then also dysprosium. Dysprosium is an R64 moon mineral that has risen sharply in price, and so that might be pushing this up. But if you look at the activity, 3 days ago, you can see that somebody or a group of people bought 2 or 3 times the daily volume. So this looks more like somebody actually went in and bought a whole fleet of them to use them in one way or the other. So this doesn't look much like market speculation to me, especially because isogen is another big material that goes into a widow, and isogen, we know, has been steadily falling over the last 8 or 9 months because CCP is actively trying to make the isogen prices fall by introducing more isogen into the system. So this is something that is no surprise. So this should in the long run impact ship prices, including the widow, which just happens to be sold out in the market now. Then the next thing that is in short supply is surprisingly titanium. So titanium is the most basic of basic minerals, and typically we have enough supply in this market, but right now the supply has actually run dry and the price has started to rise. There's less than 1 trade day available of titanium, actually only 0.6 trade days. So the current supply of titanium can only supply half a trade day at typical volumes, which is quite interesting. In the end, though, there is enough titanium in the industry, so this is definitely a short-term thing. This is just an indicator of what we're seeing everywhere else as well. There is more production going on. There is larger demand for raw materials, and that also in this case means there's larger demand for titanium. It's used in tier 1 production, so especially tier 1 battleships use a lot of it. This could in the end impact tier 1 battle prices or tier 1 battleship prices. However, isogen, for example, has a much bigger impact on those prices, and as long as that's dropping, we shouldn't see rising prices on those battleships. All right. Then I think if we look at largest supply drops, so what has the most supply sucked out of the system? We've talked about most of these. Cadmium is gone, it's being bought out. Power conduits were being bought out. Widows were being bought out. And the Federation Navy Fleet Captain Insignias that I said earlier also, somebody just dropped most of that supply to buy orders, so those are also gone. I'm going to finish today, as I almost always do, with items that might be underpriced. And that is interesting today. I want to mention one, chiral structures. So chiral structures, if you look at what they go into core temperature regulators, right? And core temperature regulators are a big part of large ships. So large ships and faction ships. So they are currently still fairly cheap, right? They made the typical price drop that we saw in all PI materials. However, these do fluctuate heavily with the amount of production that is going on. And so maybe we have seen the bottom of these, and maybe we are, with increased production, we are going to see a rise in these again. So possibly a good opportunity to buy them here. And the other thing I want to mention on the underpriced is, let's see, which one was it? Federation Navy drone damage amplifier. However, you can already see, starting in November, the you know, because of the fluctuations we've seen in availability in LP stores, the amount of items traded of the Federation Navy drone damage amplifiers has dropped a lot, just because their substitution goods have become cheaper, and so overall this is very cheap right now, but probably not a very good buy opportunity. And then I think that is it for today. Yeah, the GIST X-Type Extra Large Shield Booster. This might be a good buy opportunity as well, because it's trading close to 52-week low. It's very, very expensive, but there's a huge daily trade volume of over 20 billion. And it's been trending up the last week or so. So this might be a good buy opportunity, especially if you can get buy prices at around 1.227. All right. So this is it. And I will see you guys next week. We'll return to the regular stream. Bye-bye.